Hello and welcome back to the GorillaBiker. Today what we're going to be talking about is this 2015 Suzuki V-Strom, or DL1000 as some people will call it, V-Strom 1000. I've owned this for a little bit, put a little bit over 1,000 miles on it, so this isn't really a first ride review, but it's close enough. What we'll be covering is ergonomics, power and torque, handling and suspension, extras, cost, just general stuff like that, and kind of run through the bike from tip to butt. Someone else on YouTube says, yes, I steal things all the time. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm proud of it, in fact. So, yeah. One other thing to mention is there are Michelin Anarchy 3s on this bike. That's what I've been riding with in my entire ownership. So those tires do come into play. This bike is also not entirely stock. To get that out there, first off, there is a V-Strom, is it V-Strom? V-Strom, I was right, sport screen, so it's the lowest screen that V-Strom offer, which obviously will affect this review slightly from an ergonomics perspective. And we also do have Oxford heated grips and a Two Brothers Racing exhaust, as well as Tractech engine bars. The engine bars obviously do not affect the review. The exhaust and the screen will affect it slightly. If I was obviously comparing it to a stock bike, it will be different, so full disclosure. So to talk about the ergonomics on this bike, to start off, it's very comfortable, has been very comfortable. Particularly if you're a taller person, so to get that out there at the start, I am about 6'7" or about 200 centimeters tall, and I weigh a little bit over 280 pounds right now, or about 130 kilos, I think. So that'll give you an indication of whereabouts I am coming from in this review. But overall, very comfortable. Very comfortable. This bike has an 850mm seat height stock, which is quite tall. Particularly when you combine it with the fact it's 220, I think 230 kg wet weight. It's not a light bike. But it doesn't feel that heavy on the road, and I do think that's to do with the seating position. The position that I'm in is actually quite comfortable. You are well shielded behind the screen, and we'll get to that in a second. But the bars, stock, quite comfortable. Really no complaints there. Switch gear is all easy to get to. Mode select is easy to get to. And another important thing is everything that you need on the dash is very, very visible. No complaints whatsoever. Pegs are very comfy, nice and wide for the stock ones, and they have that rubber insert. You may want to take that off if you off-road a lot, but I think for me, which is predominantly road based on tarmac, it is very comfy, so no complaints there. One thing that obviously has definitely added to this bike for me is I do have a set of Bark Busters handguards on here, and also Oxford heated grips, and in the colder days that we've had since I bought this bike, they have definitely added to it. One thing that I have to mention straight off from ergonomics is I really don't like these mirrors. They're huge, but they don't offer great visibility, and they also create quite a bit of turbulence because they're huge and big flat boards. So I will be changing them at some point. Don't like them as a stock. I also think they don't look great. You know, the rest of the bike is quite angular now, and these are definitely a throwback to the past. So don't like the function of them, and I don't like the form of them. So they're kind of, you know, they gotta go. Everything's nice and visible, everything's nice and comfortable. One other thing that I will mention is if you are as tall as me, you may want to look into getting a tall seat, or something that's just a little bit, I suppose, more supportive of where my legs put me. It's not the most comfortable once you go above like even 100 miles. It does kind of wear on the outside of my ass a little bit, but nothing major. And since it seems to be one of the most asked for things in these reviews, here is me on the bike. So this is all of my 6'7"-ish frame on the bike. You can see leg nice and tucked in against the tank. Really no complaints about the fit and finish for a taller person. If I brake super hard, I can slide forward and kind of touch my knee off the engine bars. But yeah, overall, we'll jump onto me on the road now to talk a bit about that. But overall, super happy with this bike. Ergonomically, We'll talk about the suspension a bit later, but super happy. Once I get that screen sorted, I think it'll be pretty much next to perfect from an ergonomics point. One unfortunate thing is, before I bought this bike, someone had already changed out the original screen to this aftermarket one, which is it's by National Cycle, and it's called the V-Strom. Now, I've been playing around with angles and levels and everything else on this screen, and it's fine, but unfortunately I can't comment on the stock screen. I wish I had it available to me to test for this video, but I do not, unfortunately. Now, I do think this particular screen is a little bit too tall or something. There's something quite not right about it from where I personally would like it to be, but you know, that's okay. The bars, the stock bars, are super comfortable. I find them very easy on my arms, and the only thing is, I think they would be a little bit better, a hair taller. So I might eventually look into getting a slightly taller set of bars that are maybe a bit wider and look a little bit more beefy, you know, just because, well, I mean, why not? If you're going to change them, why not get like big beefy bars that look cool? I tend to leave stuff that work on bikes kind of alone, because it can get very expensive to change them otherwise, and these bars certainly work just fine. Now, overall wind protection, again, this bike does have these bark busters. Additionally, I know you can obviously get handguards with it stock. They're very nice, and I do also have heated grips from Oxford that came on the bike too, which again are very nice, especially since at the moment it isn't like the warmest here, so in the mornings it can get a little bit chilly. Other than that though, controls, very nice, very easy to reach. Your on off, your hazard lights, your engine start button, your brake, your clutch, all feel just lovely. And that kind of covers it for ergonomics. Honestly, like 9 out of 10. So next we want to talk about what this 90-degree V-twin, a true V-twin, not like all of the newer parallel twins you see out there. They're still twins, but they're not V-twins. You know, they're none of that. I actually don't know why they make a difference. It sounds a little bit better, but yeah. Anyway, let's talk about the power and the torque that this bad boy produces. So straight off the bat, it's almost 100 brake horsepower at 8,000 RPM and about 103 Newton meters, I think, from memory, at 4,000 RPM. Now, why is that important? The power delivery is a little bit different. You never want to rev the bike out, ever. It's really happy in lower revs, or it feels really happy in lower revs, and that's because, in my opinion, your torque peaks that early that it's kind of like I don't really feel the need to use the rest of the rev range, you know what I mean? You absolutely can. It pulls like a train all the way up to redline. But honestly, where the bike is kind of most fun is up to 4,000 or 5,000 RPM, where you can kind of just really feel that grunt. That's important, obviously, because some people like a revier engine. This V-twin is not that, definitely not. Lower down grunt, that's where the fun is. And it's a large part of why I got this bike, because I wanted to stay in kind of more legal speeds. But for sure, this is a lot more enjoyable, lower in the rev range, which obviously, of course, makes the bike kind of a little bit quieter, which also draws less attention. So I really like the power profile of this engine, and I have done a little bit of touring on it, you know, 200 plus miles in a day, and it's just lovely out in the road as well if you're just cruising. Really nice power delivery. Get it into sixth and it just cruises. It can feel a little bit lumpy between 2,000 and 3,000 revs RPM. You know, just a little bit lumpy, especially around 2 to 2.5 in particular. Kind of feels a little bit rough, but that's just the way the bike delivers power. It's absolutely fine, it just feels rough. Other than that though, on the power and torque front, we do have to mention, of course, the two brothers racing can on this bike that sounds sublime. So this engine can really make a good noise if you let it breathe a bit and open it up. And that's something that I would highly recommend someone to look at, as a Two Brothers can. This came on the bike. I have no affiliation to Two Brothers. They probably don't know I exist, but I really like that exhaust. And I think it's something that's a little bit overlooked sometimes. I'm doing my hands again, sorry. I talk with my hands. I think it's something that's overlooked, is really just opening up bikes, letting them breathe and enjoying the noises they make. And Two Brothers did a great job on this one. The tone is nice, there's no baffle in it, but it's not too loud, which in this day and age is important because everyone wants to call, you know, the people, the fun police, we'll call them. There's lots of fun police out there, but you know, what can you do? We're not going to get rid of them, unfortunately, legally. Yeah. And now for performance and torque. So the V-Strom itself starting us off there, making a statement. And honestly, like I've always said in these reviews, the numbers on paper don't make a huge amount of difference to me. The fact of the matter is, I know I can do 0 to 60 and pretty fast, and I can stop pretty fast and all that stuff, but that's later. But on the road, how is the power and torque? So like 6th gear, 3,500 revs, roll on. It just climbs. It's honestly, this engine is so nice. It's not a beast. I wouldn't refer to it as a beast. It's not a slow bike. It's not a particularly fast bike, but the torque makes it so nice to live with, you know. Other than that though, like I mentioned off the bike, it is a 6-speed chain final drive motorcycle. You can change your sprockets and whatever else for your final drive. As you can see, in 6th gear at 65 miles an hour actual, we're sitting at 4,000 RPM. So there's definitely a little bit of room there for you to re-gear this bike if you want to. You know, you certainly don't have to leave it where it is, because I think, you know, once you kind of hit 100 miles an hour, that's where you get into a lot of trouble with the law authorities. So generally, that's what I kind of look at as my upper ceiling, is like, well, how fast do I want to get there? How do I want the bike to behave? And set that as kind of my upper speed. Obviously, with it being able to top out at still 120 or so, just in case, you know, just in case the zombies come, I need to get somewhere really fast. So again, overall for power and torque, it's super nice, I'm not going to lie. In any gear you have power available from pretty much any revs, even if like from very low revs the bike feels like it wants to shake itself to pieces. But generally you twist and you just accelerate smoothly, and it sounds great and it feels great. At no point is it going to you know, make your face skin peel back. It's not that type of bike. But for the road and for the applications it's made for, it's perfectly enough. And not only that, it's a lot of fun. In and out of corners, having that torque coming up out of the corner is an absolute blast. And honestly, from a power and torque perspective, I would recommend this bike to anyone who uses it as a kind of a daily, and also being able to use it for fun, which is exactly my application, and that's kind of why I went for it. So next, what we're going to talk about on this bike is the suspension and handling, brakes and handling, whatever way you want to define it. We do have dual, sorry, my brain broke there. We do have dual 4-piston calipers up front. They are Tokiko. Just wanted to confirm that they were definitely Tokiko. They are Tokiko. They work really well. No complaints whatsoever. I have had to jam on the brakes on this really hard twice so far, due to the wildlife on the roads over here, and this thing has just stopped like I dropped anchors. Really impressed, to be honest. Now, it definitely stopped a lot better when I tuned the suspension to me, and that's another huge positive for this bike. And this is something that I really also can't stress enough. This bike from stock, the suspension works really well for me. With my gear and stuff on, you know, I'm gonna be pushing 300 pounds. I had a bag to my back, possibly 320 pounds if I put some, you know, some stuff in it, which 10 kg, by the way, in my bag, less than 10 kg. Not something is surprising. If I put my tripod, camera, other cameras in there, it's gonna be around that. So the suspension handles it just fine. I had to dial it up a little bit for sure. Focus on my face. Yeah, where are you going looking over there? I had to dial it up a little bit for sure. I had to do a little bit of adjusting, but the beauty of it is you have that. You have a quick preload adjuster on the rear shock, and you have full adjustment on the front of the bike. on the forks on the front of the bike. So you really can just play with everything, and it runs lovely on the road. Brakes are fantastic, and the bike really handles nicely in through corners. You do know that you don't have, you know, 2 tires the same size and whatever else like you'd have, or, you know, the same circumference, the same radius as you would have like on a sports bike, whatever else. You can tell that if you've ever ridden like a dual sport or something that has a bigger front wheel in comparison to a rear wheel. You can tell into corners, but it still handles beautifully. I really am taken with this bike, how it rides, and I think Suzuki did an excellent bloody job. And I do think that these bikes are slept on a little bit from, you know, all the stuff I read and watched myself before I bought it. I do think that it's better than a lot of people think, particularly as a road bike. I haven't really used it off-road, can't comment on the handling off-road much. I did one gravel track and it was fine, that's about it. I'm not an off-road rider. If you're here looking for an off-road review, look somewhere else. There's a reason I got the cast wheels on my V-Strom, you know. So then we're going to talk about our brakes and suspension and package. And to start us off straight away, the brakes on this bike are really, really good. Like very, very good. The brakes on this bike honestly are phenomenal. No complaints whatsoever. I haven't managed to kick on ABS yet. So it's obviously not very aggressive because I have had 1 or 2 situations where I needed to brake quite hard. There's a lot of animals and whatnot over here. And the suspension on this bike is a dream. On the road, it's really, really nice. I have barely had to play with it. I upped the preload on the back ever so slightly. It was a little bit soft for me. But the nice thing is I still have shed loads of adjustment left. You know, it's not like I was up at my very, very, very max, which is unusual. Which is unusual for me, generally on motorcycles, in particularly obviously motorcycles. I know cars, I don't know why I'm saying particularly motorcycles. On motorcycles, generally I get the issue that, you know, if I adjust it to suit my needs, then I'm at the absolute limit of the bike. But obviously Suzuki in 2015 decided that, hey, actually the stock suspension should be able to handle at minimum 2 people and some luggage, which they did, and you can tell it's really supple through the corners, really reactive and nice into braking zones. So into this braking zone and out, and I just left it in 6th, back to the power. This shouldn't have been in 6th there, but it just handled it, you know. And I do find that I end up leaving it in a particular gear because it doesn't really matter, you know. But yeah, in and out of corners, it really does handle everything with, to use a fancy word, aplomb, because I read it recently and I looked up what it meant. But it handles corners really, really well. Even like these roads are not a perfect surface. They have lots of bumps and ridges and whatnot in them. On the CB750, I've actually been on this road on the CB750, and a lot of these bumps and little channels and whatnot, the CB tends to get a little bit more upset over them. Now, it is a much older suspension package, but it just kind of shows that how far we have come in, obviously, you know, the 20-year interim between those 2 bikes. But either way, it really does make a difference. And then, you know, over bumps like the railway tracks back there, it just soaks them up. But the thing that I like most about it is, while this is technically an adventure bike, or an adventure-orientated bike, we should say, you know, if you jump on it and you go out on these roads, you know, it just handles it so well. So you can still have a hell of a lot of fun on this bike on the tarmac. And now we'll do a brake test. So we're at 65, which is actually 60, and hard braking. And yes, I did check was the car coming behind me first. So I could have brought that to a stop in no time. I got ABS to kick on a little bit on the back wheel, I felt, through my foot as I was using all of the brakes. But it's just so controllable. That's the thing that I really like about this bike. You know, I knew I had more squeeze in my right hand. I didn't really have much left on the back because the back got a bit light and hence locked up because I dived so much. So again, you can play around with the preload and stuff, but the fact of the matter is, we'll just do it again here. So coming up to this corner, we'll go a little bit faster and brake. Back gets light again. It just, you know what I mean? It's really an excellent brake package. But even into corners, you know, I was braking all the way in there, nice and relaxed. You kind of don't even think about it. You just do it on this bike. I didn't have to learn them. They worked so well from the off. And that's honestly the highest
the highest praise I can give a bike is the brakes are balanced for the bike. They're not overly responsive. You know, they don't want to throw you over the handlebars. They just work really well for the bike that they were built for. And I have to say, for a stock setup, no complaints. Honestly, for a brake system that's built for a bike, I would have to give this like a 9 out of 10 as well. I do think like factory braided lines would have brought it up to that 10, just so, you know, they have that much longer lifespan. And realistically, I don't know why manufacturers don't go with factory braided lines these days. Yeah, there's a little bit of extra cost in it. You could probably pass that on to the end consumer, the purchaser of the vehicle. I personally wouldn't complain, and I don't think a lot of other people would too. And it's just, at this point, I think the technology exists there. It's better. Why not use it, you know? And that would be my only complaint. Otherwise, suspension is aces. You know, the adjustability on the suspension is very, very nice. I like that. It really does make a difference, especially when you're a bigger person like me and you want to be able to use this bike the same as like smaller people can, and, you know, be able to dial it up without spending extra money on the suspension. That's a really, really, really important thing, you know, to be able to kind of cater to the entire audience of the bike community. That's really important to me. So thumbs up to Suzuki. Well done.
I just realized I forgot to do aesthetics, which I'm sure a lot of people would be upset with, since, you know, I've had a lot of questions on do I like the look of this bike. So to run through it really quickly, yes, I do. The beak is contentious. I actually like it. I think if you compare the front of this bike to the front of the last generation V-Strom, the last generation V-Strom kind of looked like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. You know, that's honestly what it always reminded me of. For some reason, it just looked sad. It looked like it had never been cared for. It had no friends. Is that saying that the previous generation V-Strom wasn't an absolutely fantastic bike? No. Would I have bought one? Probably not. I never liked looking at them, so, you know, that's what threw me off. Is this bike a little bit industrial? Yeah. Scaffolding, you know. They have this big horrible sticker on the frame here. They definitely could have put it somewhere better. You know, you have nice tank, and then this, like this plastic. It sounds kind of a little bit cheap. And then you also have, you know, kind of fakey metal. But overall, I really like the cast wheels. I think the cast wheels are lovely. The gold forks are just magnificent. The original exhaust is kind of a little bit ugly. This Two Brothers one, in my opinion, is beautiful. Engine is quite nice. Engine doesn't really need anything to dress it up. You know, if they had put a dressier clutch cover on there, maybe that would have added to it a little bit. The front headlight looks, again, a little bit dull for sure, but I think the whole bike together looks really quite nice. The engine bars that came with this bike definitely added to it. Without the engine bars, I think the front looks a little bit more empty. So that's why I would have added engine bars, not only to just protect the upper side of the bike, but also just because it does look a little bit light without it, I think. These handguards, again, also kind of add to the look of the bike, in my opinion. I think they look again a little bit beefier, a little bit more industrial, but again, that adds to the overall kind of industrial look and feel of the bike. I actually really like it, and I'm not making that up. You know, when I saw this particular V-Strom in particular, I said particular too many times there. When I saw this one up for sale, it's what caught my eye. It's actually the look of it that caught my eye. I was like, oh, that's a nice V-Strom. Was it the gold and the forks? Maybe. Was it the engine bar? Maybe. Was it the Two Brothers racing exhaust? Maybe it was all together. Maybe it's just a nice build, probably the way I would have ended up doing a V-Strom. But yeah, I know obviously some parts of the looks of this bike are contentious. I know some people don't like the screen. I actually like the little bit of analog with the little bit of digital. I'm still not a huge fan of TFTs. Yeah, they display a huge amount of information for sure, but I just can't get used to them. But then again, you know, some of my favorite clocks and stuff are like the ones on the CB750, just too analog as it gets clocks. You have to wind back your mileage counter. that's not for everyone. I understand that, but this is, after all, my bike, and it's my opinion on aesthetics, and I think it's a very pretty bike. I really like it. Beaks, I don't really get them. Even when they're for oil coolers, I think there's better ways to do it, but I do think that the beak, in my opinion, is much better than the old front end of the V-Strom. So it was definitely a step in the right direction. Like I said, I wouldn't have bought the old one, not only because of its well, actually mainly because of its looks. Really, it's a great bike. But this one, obviously, I did buy because I liked it. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't really have any complaints other than that sticker on the frame. I don't know why they put that sticker there. They definitely could have put it somewhere else. And the fuel cap actually did look a bit boring, so I did put that Suzuki carbon decal on there, which kind of spruced it up a little bit. But other than that, I actually really like the look of it, like a lot. I always look back at it when I walk away, which is the true sign. If you don't look back at your bike, sell it and buy a new one. Anyway, there's aesthetics. Sorry, I forgot. Extras, there aren't a huge amount to talk about. You do have a little bit of, interesting stuff in the dash. I'll actually get my keys. So, the important things to me on the dash is we do have a gear indicator, which is nice to have. We do have our range in miles. I have it switched to miles. We have a range in miles. We have battery voltage, which is being drained right now. We have our live MPG. You have your average MPG and your range. Up top then you have trip 1, trip 2, and your total mileage, which I've actually done 1,400 miles I think on this. Nothing major, and then you obviously have your temperature. So nothing major and time and air temperature. You can swap through the couple of other things, but I think the main thing that a lot of people will be interested in on this bike is you do have modes. So you have traction control level off, 1 and 2. On the road I usually leave it in 1. I found 2 just a little bit intrusive. 1 is fine on the road, and it's kind of nice to have the little bit of safety net there. And off is obviously off. You would use off definitely off-road, or if you were to take this on a track. And I'm not saying I'm going to take it on a track, but I'm probably going to take it on a track because I don't have a track bike, so I have to take something on the track. Other than that, this bike does have ABS. I have not found it intrusive really on the front. On the rear, it comes on way too quickly. Now I've had a look at the caliper looks fine. The brake pads are low-ish, so that could be affecting it, but in my opinion, the rear ABS activates way too quick, which would be a massive detriment off-road. Other things that I think for a bike from 2015, extras wise, that it could be missing, or some people might think it's missing. Cruise control doesn't have cruise. Would cruise be nice to have in America? Absolutely. The other thing that is a nice little extra is this did come with a power outlet from factory, which means that I can just charge my phone straight from the off. Another nice little extra is you do have the adjustment on the screen. You can push it forward, that's maxi. Push it again all the way back, forward 1. So you have 3 adjustment settings, and it's just a crank. You just push the 2 sides. The other things to mention then obviously are fully adjustable front suspension. That is a nice extra that doesn't come on a lot of bikes, and an easy access rear preload for the rear. Another extra that I really don't like is a very exposed oil filter. So when I can afford it, I'm definitely going to put a skid pan on there too. But that's one of the extras that is kind of like a not nice to have, and I don't know why they did that. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But yeah, that's kind of it really.
It does have one thing else one other thing in its back pocket that a lot of other bikes maybe don't have, and that's really good fuel economy, which isn't important for me when purchasing a bike, as I've mentioned in the past, but it does come into play for a lot of other people, and I think it's worth mentioning from a practical perspective. If you are commuting in and out to work on this thing, it really does sip fuel. I have gotten 200 miles out of 2 tanks in a row on this. Okay, yes, I was very low. I think I had like about 1.5 litre left both times. But I did 200 miles, and I did 200 miles without me babying it very much. One particular ride I was definitely not babying it at all. But anyway, so about 200 miles is attainable from this tank stock, which is pretty awesome. So from a practical perspective, look, you have acres of back seat room or passenger seat room to strap down bags to. You know, you have the stock kind of rack to strap things to. You can get panniers from factory. It's a really practical bike. And you know, comfort, cooling, everything else. There's not many foibles this thing has. Traffic doesn't phase it, which I have tested in pretty higher temperatures for most of the world, and it just kept on trucking. The temperature barely climbed, so at no point would I be concerned about this thing, you know, throwing a fit in traffic or whatever else. Now, should lane splitting, filtering be legal in traffic here? Yes, I think it's stupid. Any country that doesn't allow you to lane split on a bike, it's a stupid rule made by people who are jealous of motorcycles, and they need to get over themselves and let motorcycles lane split. So practicality, I would rank it up highly in the points. I think right now in this one's current, how would you put it, current setup, I think I would probably put it at a 7, 8 out of 10. As soon as panniers go on there, it's going to be a 9 as well. I don't see anything that could get you much more practical than this, unless you're on like Honda's NC750 that does, you know, it doesn't really use fuel. That's kind of the only thing that would put something above this, is, you know, much higher fuel economy. But on average I get about 43, 44 US MPG, so I'll put the numbers up on screen, and it's more than enough for me any day of the week. Things that I do believe this bike is missing, and I don't mean to rag on it too hard. So the light isn't great, the headlight isn't amazing by modern standards. I think they could have went with an LED in 2015 when this bike was brought out. They were available. They have since switched to LEDs. I don't know, can I refit that front end to this? That'd be pretty cool to do. But that's one minor takeaway that I think, you know, they really could have put LEDs on there. I think they're missing that. I think because it's a 2015 bike and it has traction control and all that fancy business, you know, why did they not put cruise control on here? You know, I know other people have mentioned power modes I don't really care about. But one big thing that this bike does not have, that I do think is probably a more major negative than a lot of other stuff, is it does not have switchable ABS. Now, why is that important? So, because this is targeted or marketed at ADV, the ADV market, you really shouldn't have to go pull a fuse to turn off your ABS. You should just be able to turn off your ABS for the rear wheel on a button on the dash or on the handlebars. That's quite important, and it is missing from this bike. Not super impressed with that. I think that's something that really should be on every bike, because it costs nothing. You know, to put that on a bike costs absolutely nothing, and it does make a difference. Oh, look at the little horses. It costs absolutely nothing really for the manufacturer to put on there, and it just saves a lot of time and hassle, and will make the bike more attractive to a lot of people who want to use these things off-road. Would it really put me off? Not particularly, but even for me, I think it's just a feature that really should be on there. Look at all the swamplands. I really think it's a feature that should be on there, and I do think it's a feature that's missing.
And then I suppose the cost. So what did I pay for this bike? Enough. I think it was around about $8,000. Not out the door. There was obviously all the dealer fees and stuff, which are a travesty, to be honest. But I think it was a pretty good price for a lot of the stuff that's on the market at the moment, and I really wanted a big bike for myself to tour on. You can get these for around that price, 2015s. And you know, as you move up the years, they do get quite a little bit more expensive, and brand new, they are extremely expensive these days, in my opinion. Obviously they've added a lot more. If I was going to buy one new, I would probably look at the V-Strom 800 DE. I don't know what I go for the 1000. I think that 800 looks fantastic for the price of what it is. And honestly, it's probably just as capable as this bike with the modern tech and everything else. It is a parallel twin though. So I mean, cost used, I think it batters a lot of the competition. You know, I was between this and an Africa Twin when I bought it, and I'm very pleased with everything that I got on this bike for the price that I got. You know, I would have bought engine bars anyway, I would have bought an exhaust anyway. I don't know they've bought Oxford heated grips, and I definitely wouldn't have bought that screen because it doesn't help anything. So, you know, I think from a cost perspective, I think these are excellent value used if you're looking for something like this. A more road orientated ADV bike. I think this is honestly, from a cost perspective, it's an excellent purchase. Let me roll over here. So to summarize, would I recommend this bike? Yes. Would I buy this bike? I did. Do I regret buying this bike? Absolutely not. I've loved every minute I've spent with it. The only thing I don't love is how expensive panniers and top boxes and stuff are right now. So that's something just to be aware of if you're looking at aftermarket hard cases, etc. They are extremely expensive. You're talking they're going to cost you about a quarter of what you pay for the bike, paid for the bike at least, which is honestly insane, and it's why I don't have any yet. I'm really kind of considering my options. So that's honestly the only thing that I can fault this bike for, is the aftermarket cost of things, because it's kind of falling into the category of challenging the Africa Twin, the GS's. All of that luggage is the same, but obviously someone who buys a GS has much deeper pockets, and or is just, you know, not as frugal as someone who buys a V-Strom. I definitely don't have deep enough pockets to buy a GS, so that's partially why I went for a V-Strom. But I also went for it just for its performance characteristics. It's quite a light bike. You know, it doesn't have a huge amount of power, but again, it's quite a light bike, and that's honestly what I went for. Just a road bike. The Africa Twin is kind of more oriented towards off-road, as is the Tenere 700, etc. And then GSs are just way too expensive. So that's kind of what piqued me to this. And I know people have asked me about the Super Tenere, and again, I've been on a Super Tenere. I actually had a little test one before I bought this bike, and it was just a little bit too heavy. It felt more heavy than this did on the road, so that's why I went for this. So yeah, to summarize, I bought this from Pirate Ship Power Sports in Wilmington. They were fine to deal with, no complaints. I would recommend them to people. I think they're nice people down there, and obviously the bike has been flawless since I bought it, so thumbs up for that. Anything else? If you'd like to sponsor some luggage for this bike, any companies out there, let me know in the comments or on Instagram. But yeah, I would definitely advise this bike for taller riders, 100%. Very comfortable, performs nicely on the road. The only thing you're not going to keep up with is like higher powered sports bikes, if that's what you're into. But I don't think you're buying a bike like this if you're going out there to be a hooligan. I just don't think you are. So yeah, highly recommend this bike. And if you're interested to see how it performs throughout a couple of years, stick with the channel, and I'll definitely be making a lot more videos on this bike because I really do like it. Except that screen. We need to do something about the screen, which we will. Anyway, if you've watched, thank you very much for watching. As always, a huge thank you to all of my patrons. I really do appreciate your support, and it's been absolutely fantastic to get to meet a few of my patrons in person over here so far. So let's hope that we get to meet a lot more in the coming years. And also hopefully some of my Australian patrons, or some of my, do I have any Australian patrons right now? Maybe not. My former, oh, I do have some, well, Irish based in Australia. So hopefully we'll get to meet them. And obviously some of my patrons from Ireland and the UK, etc. I'd like to meet everyone. If you're a patron, I definitely want to meet you in person and buy you a coffee. And yeah, until next time, thank you again for watching. I really do hope that this was somewhat informative and useful. And yeah, adios. Outro crew, if you were in the market for an ADV motorcycle, what would be the #1 thing you were looking for? Let me know. Bye, outro crew.